Hi guys! Hi, I am Nickey.
Hi, I am Jackey.
Together we discuss future of design.
Hey, Nickey. What are we discussing today?
Hey Jackey, today we are discussing about the role of traditional UX designer versus design engineer.
Do you know what we call traditional designers?
What?
Figma designers. Anyways,
Yeah.
what are you thinking on this?
I was just thinking what a conventional UX designer currently follows. They create some artifacts like user journeys in which we design the goals, steps, touch points, emotions, pain points of a user. What artifact replacement will I have as a design engineer?
Well, you just correctly mentioned. So what you guys do is just goals, steps, touch points,
Yeah.
and then with that emotion mapping, finally the pain point. So this will get transformed into intent graphs because at the end of the day, AI needs to understand what's the intent of what the user query, so it can actually fetch the right responses to the user. Intent graphs can translate like what are the user utterances. So how these utterances are mapped to inferred intent, which again have to be mapped to conditions. There could be like paths followed by tools, actions, and results follow-up. So again, this is how it will shape, but this is what will change from user journey to intent graphs.
So, what you're trying to say is that currently the journeys are very rigid in nature, which breaks when a user talks naturally. So, now instead, what will happen will be actually designing intent graphs which will handle all these realities like users jumping between different contexts, correcting themselves, combining different tasks, and ask stuff in weird ways.
You're right on there. Yeah, that's how it will shape.
Now, Jackie, please don't tell me about UI screens. So now designers wouldn't be creating UI static screens or what?
You correctly said, like, so UI screens are static of pages and flows. So designers working in screens will also get transformed. They will be designing dynamic UI states. AI will generate UI, period. What I mean by this is we are not going to be creating screens anymore. It will get the user context, right? It will know the user preference. And based on that, model will know how much confidence it is. And then it will know which tools to call. Basically the policies which we will be designing, we will be defining the safety constraints. And lastly, like the user informations, his consumption patterns, which will help in defining the goals, right? So if you do this, you're basically helping AI generate the UI in runtime. Now, what could be an example for this is think about component behaviors. So what if a designer like us can design these behaviors like loaders, streaming?
So now, instead of designing screen to screen, design engineer will actually design the relative behaviors and components which AI can use to render any state given the context.
Right, 100%. So instead of designing screens, we'll be designing designing the reactive behaviors plus components, so which the AI can actually use to render any state.
All right. Now I think you have already won twice. Please don't tell me about user flows. Usually user clicks step by step in user flows. Tell me what a design engineer will do.
So agent will decide the flows, which means it knows what to do. What we will play as a design engineer is we'll be helping in tuning it, right? So we will be eventually defining the observability tools. Why was something rendered in this way? When I say tuning, it means that again, we have to define the constraints, the system prompts, orchestration policies. And once you know that this is how the agent is deciding, then you can think and decide to create a specialized agent, or could I treat this as a separate workflow? So you can take this call after you start tuning it. Sometimes it becomes too scholastic that you don't need that kind of behavior. You don't want it to be like too unpredictable. You want to control the output, you want to make it a little bit consistent, then maybe you have to treat it like a workflow or just create a specialized agent which you can control. You can tune that smaller aspect and it gives a kind of consistent output. So that's how it's going to happen.
So what you mean is that as a UX designer, we will be designing the decision tree where we will be actually capturing the context, the decision conditions, the tool invocation points, confirmation points, and stop conditions, and much more, right?
You're 100% right. If you design this decision tree, I think you already help the agent in deciding the best course of action so that your outcome is much more tuned towards the goal of the user in a right way.
Okay. I was very much curious about microcopy now.
Microcopy? What about that?
We have like button labels, usually the helper text, the
Okay.
empty states, the error messages. How a UX engineer will have a transformation in this aspect?
Just think why we need to define microcopies at such granular level. As a designer, I don't want to do this minutia stuff. So we have to start thinking that how we design microcopy for model
Yeah.
and not for user. This is the core aspect of how agents will start defining the microcopies. If you want to achieve this, all we got to do is just create some prompt templates of how you want your microcopy to be. And we also start creating the fallback copies. So define the logic for that. For example, when I say template, define what's the tone, what's the format, what's the constraints, what's my refusal state, or you can say like styles, and how I want my output to be. Like, do you want like a JSON text? What is your need? So if you define these policies, AI is really smart to decide what kind of copy makes sense to the user based on the context and runtime.
Oh, so what you're saying is that instead of defining the copy for each state and button, we actually create the prompt library, fallback messages, the evals to set regression after prompt edits.
Right. So this are the key things that we'll be doing. And I hope you agree on what I'm trying to say. But look, you're actually losing badly with me. You're gonna be wiped out. Figma designer, you can't embrace design engineer.
I think, I would give points to you this time.
You have to. There's no alternative. But let's see, what else do you want to bet?
So let's just address the elephant in the room now.
Huh?
The persona.
Wait. I knew that you'll be speaking. And I think that's the designer's wave. Every designer will be like, oh, I'll be designing the personas. Okay, so traditionally, the designers, when they say personas, are kind of static types. Like, for example, what's my manager persona, or what's my first time user persona. So now imagine what kind of work design engineer will be doing in these aspects. Adaptive personas. Agents are trained with a lot of information, which means it kind of have this persona in their records, but it has to adapt to the user context. That's the catch. For example, if we define the voice and behavior of an agent, so it has to change based on the user's expertise, the urgency, the domain knowledge, and preferences. So if you define these stuffs, I think the personas itself are getting evolved. So which means AI can start curating screens or doing on behalf of user much more efficiently. Bingo.
Wow, nailed it, man. Amazing. I mean, I just wanted to, discuss the last point, that is error states is something that is really important. We should discuss that today. So
error states?
Yeah, usually we define the error messages and the edge cases here.
Right. So any guess?
I think I'm failing in this now.
Let me help you here.
Yeah.
So a design engineer will be defining what is the recovery plus the guardrails for the agent.
Yeah.
So GenAI needs error handling at system level, not at user level, which traditionally we had been doing before. So when I say guardrails, like one of the questions that might come across to you is like, what is guardrails? So these are the set of policy constraints, and you can also define what kind of permissions checks do you want, what kind of tools constraints. What will help is it will prevent any kind of wrong happening, right? So we are looking at prevention. That's why we set up these guardrails. The other very important is, what are my recovery measures? Which means what happens if things go wrong, right? In recovery, what happens is we have to figure out what are the steps the model should take in case things go wrong. For example, if the model is uncertain, right, we should define or we should tune the behavior in such a way that ask targeted questions to the user so that you get more context about it. So let's say a tool fail. So what happens is you have to design or devise a plan for retry strategy. For example, hallucination risk is happening. Then we have to start defining the citing sources. If you really want to see what exactly we'll be delivering as a design engineer is the guardrail matrix. For example, identify the risk type, what kind of detection might be there, and what could be the preventions we can do, and then what could be the recovery for this kind of risk and possible UX copies which can be adapted. Then you can also start thinking about what is my degraded mode, which means what if the user explicitly choose to off the AI features?
Right.
So what happens then? So we have to think about a simple fallback mechanism which still user can achieve that. And there could be a number of use cases why people want to switch off the AI, maybe some privacy concerns, or maybe there are some geopolitical scenarios. So, and then you still need to make sure that your product can be consumed by the user and there is less frustrations from them, right? So this is how people will be defining the recovery and the guardrails.
Wow. Loved it, Jackey. I think you nailed it. And yeah, I think I'm well prepared to transition from a UX designer to a design engineer.
Welcome. We'll see you in the next battle.
All right. Let's see who wins next time.
Oh yeah, bring it on. Bring it on.